Okay, when I say that today's Tres Leches cake is one of the lightest, most moist cakes you're ever gonna have, I honestly mean it. This Tres Leches cake is made up of a super light and soft sponge cake that's soaked in a rich but not too sweet milk mixture, and it's topped with an incredibly delicious stabilized whipped cream frosting. It is honestly on another level of good. Now to start off, you want to preheat your oven to 180°C or 350°F conventional. Remember to lower the temperature if you're using a convection oven, and only grease the bottom of a 9 by 13 inch cake pan. You want to leave the sides of the pan ungreased because this is going to help our sponge cake stick to the sides of the pan as it rises, and because it's stuck, it means that we can flip our cake tin over to allow our cake to cool upside down once it's done, and this is just going to stop the sponge cake from deflating too much, which is going to help retain its super light and fluffy texture. Now you just want to set your cake tin aside for now, and next we're going to sift together our dry ingredients. So I've got 120 grams or 1 cup of plain all-purpose flour, 30 grams or a 1/4 cup of cornstarch, 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder, and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Once that's all sifted in, you just want to use a whisk or fork to give that a good mix until it's well combined, and set it aside for now. Next, we're going to separate the yolks and whites from 5 large eggs. I just like to do this step using my hands. I find it's the easiest way for me, and because our hands are nice and soft, the egg yolks are less likely to break when you handle them. Now once that's done, you just want to pop your egg whites into a medium-sized bowl. Just make sure they're at room temperature as well, and using a hand or stand mixer on a medium-high speed, whip the egg whites for 30 seconds until they're foamy, and then you want to gradually add in 100 grams or 1/2 cup of white granulated sugar, allowing about 10 seconds to pass every time you add a little bit of the sugar in. Once all the sugar is added in, you just want to keep whipping until you reach stiff peaks, which should take about 3 to 4 minutes. You want to be careful not to over whip the egg whites though, so just keep checking them, and once you've got stiff peaks, you're done. So I've got some nice stiff peaks now, and now I'm just going to get all of my egg whites off of my attachments, and then I'm just going to set my egg whites aside for now. Now next, in a large bowl, add in a further 100 grams or 1/2 cup of white granulated sugar and 1.5 tablespoons of warm water. You don't want the water to be hot, just warm, and then using a spatula, mix the sugar so that it's coated in the water. This is just going to help the sugar start to dissolve. Next, you want to add in the 5 egg yolks from earlier and 2 teaspoons of vanilla, and then using your mixer, you just want to mix that on a medium-high speed until the egg yolks are pale and slightly thickened. This should take about 2 minutes. Once that's done, you want to stream in 30 grams or 2 tablespoons of unflavored vegetable oil. I use canola oil, and mix that in until it's well combined. Okay, now it is finally time to bring everything together. So you just want to get all of, any of the batter off of your attachments, because the rest of the mixing we're going to do by hand. So first, add in 1/2 of your whipped egg whites into the egg yolk mixture, and using a spatula, gently fold that in until it's just combined. Be careful not to overmix because you don't want to deflate the meringue. Then you want to add in your pre-sifted dry ingredients from earlier and fold that in until just combined. Again, do not overmix. And then to finish off, add in the remaining egg whites and fold that in until just combined. If you do have some large lumps of egg whites that you kind of want to break down, then you can push the egg whites up against the side of the bowl with your spatula, but just be sure to do this really gently. Once the batter is done, you should have a thick, almost marshmallow-like flowy mixture like this that's still quite light and airy. So that is our batter done, and now you just want to evenly distribute it into our pre-prepared cake tin. Once that's done, just give the tin a little shake to help even out the batter, and then drop the cake tin lightly on the counter to remove any large air bubbles. And now this is going to go into the oven for 25 minutes or until the top is set and slowly bounces back when you touch it. You can also check the center with a toothpick, and if it comes out clean or with a few moist crumbs, then it's done. Now, while the cake is baking, it will puff up quite a lot, but don't worry, this will go down once the cake is cooling. So once the cake is done, the next steps are super important. So you want to immediately drop the cake tin on your counter from a height of about 10 centimeters. This is going to help release some of the steam, and then you want to flip the cake over onto a wire rack while it's still in the cake tin and allow it to cool for 30 minutes upside down. Because we didn't grease the sides of the tin, the cake will still be stuck to the tin, and by letting it cool upside down, gravity is going to prevent the cake from deflating and it's going to retain its light and airy texture. Now, while the cake is cooling, we're going to go ahead and prepare our 3 milk mixture that we're going to be soaking our cake with. So to a jug or something that will allow you to easily pour the milk mixture, add in 425 grams or 1 3/4 cups of evaporated milk. 1 12-ounce can will not be enough, so you will need a second can. 305 grams or 1 cup of condensed milk. 1 14-ounce can will be enough. You'll just have a little bit of leftover condensed milk. And 180 grams or 3/4 of a cup of heavy cream. And then you just want to give that a good mix until it's well combined. Now 30 minutes later, you want to flip your cake over. It should be almost cool by now. And now you just want to run a knife along the edges of the cake tin to release the sponge. This is just going to make sure the edges are soaked really well with the milk. And then you'll also notice that there's a bit of a crust at the top of the sponge, and you want to take that crust off by just rubbing it gently with your hands. It should come off relatively easily. This is just going to help our milk mixture soak into the cake really well. And I also find that sometimes the crust on a sponge cake is where that kind of eggy taste can develop. And I'm quite sensitive to that eggy smell and taste, so I just like to take the top off. Now, before we pour the milk mixture over, I just want you to take a closer look at this sponge. You can see just how incredibly soft and light and fluffy it is. It's so good. So before pouring the milk mixture, grab a fork and gently poke holes all around the top of the cake. Try not to go right down to the bottom though, so just poke the holes around 3/4 of the way through, because this is just going to prevent the milk from collecting at the bottom of the cake without having soaked the middle of the sponge adequately. Now once that's done, you just want to carefully pour the milk mixture all over the top of the cake. I like to just pour a little over the cake first, allow it to soak in, and then go over the cake again. You want to make sure the entire top, including the edges, are soaked in the milk, and try to do this as evenly as you can. Now once all the milk mixture is finished, you just want to cover the top of the cake with some cling wrap and then pop it into the fridge for a minimum of 2 hours. Ideally, you want to keep it overnight if you have the time. This is just going to help the milk soak evenly into the cake. If you try and eat the cake too early, like say half an hour after you've made it, then you might end up with patches of the cake that aren't soaked properly. So it's been about 2 hours now, and if I take the cling wrap off, you can see that the cake is looking good. It's looking nice and moist. And now we're just going to pop this aside for a second, and we're going to go ahead and make a stabilized whipped cream frosting. Now you can just go ahead and make a regular whipped cream that has, a bit of sugar and vanilla whipped into it. But today we're going for a stabilized whipped cream because firstly, it just tastes incredibly delicious. And two is that because it's nice and stable, after some time, your whipped cream isn't going to weep or become watery. So it's super easy to make. To a large bowl, add in 225 grams or 1 cup of cold mascarpone, 55 grams or half a cup of powdered sugar, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And then you just want to mix that on a low speed for about 5 seconds, and then turn up the speed to a medium-high and mix until everything is well combined. Next, you want to add in 335 grams or 1.5 cups of cold heavy cream, and again mix on a low speed to allow everything to combine without it splattering everywhere, and then turn up the speed to a medium-high and whip until you reach stiff peaks. Be careful not to over whip the cream though, so once you've reached a good firm consistency, then you want to stop there. And then that is my stabilized whipped cream frosting all done. It is honestly so easy to make. So now you just want to grab your soaked cake from earlier and spread the whipped cream out evenly over the top. I just like to use my offset spatula to help spread everything out nice and evenly. Now to finish off, I like to sprinkle on a little bit of ground cinnamon. Now I'm just using my fingers to do this because sometimes when you use a sieve, it's hard to control how much of the cinnamon comes out, and sometimes you can end up with, putting way too much on top and it just kind of overpowers the cake. Now you can leave your Tres Leches cake just like that, or you can go ahead and top it with some fruit. So I've got some strawberries here, which I'm going to put on top of each individual slice, but apart from that, that is my Tres Leches cake all done. This cake is honestly one of the lightest, softest, most moist cakes you will ever have. It's rich, creamy, and not too sweet, and literally melts in your mouth. That is so good. The cake is just so incredibly soft and moist, and it's so light. Like, I could probably eat like 3 or 4 of these slices. And what I love about this recipe is although it's been soaked in those 3 milks, it's not like mushy or disintegrating. So you still have a nice little bite to the cake, but you still get all of that moisture from the milk in there as well. It is honestly so easy to eat. Like in 3 bites, I've pretty much almost finished that pretty big slice that I had. So yeah, you have to be careful because before you know it, you've had like 3 slices. That's how good it is. So that is it for today, guys. If you do decide to give this Tres Leches cake a go, then please do leave a review on my blog. It really helps my content out and I absolutely love hearing from you guys. I'll see you in the next video.